Look at the table. Just look at it. It is round, it has no head, no foot, every side is equal, every edge the same distance from the center. Whoever designed a round table understood something fundamental about humanity, that no one person should sit above another, that every voice deserves proximity to the truth, that power, if it must exist, should at least have the decency to face you. But someone pulled a chair to the top anyway, and the rest of us, we let them. Imagine a table, not just any table. Imagine the world as a table, a great, wide, circular surface with the continents carved into its wood, the oceans breathing between its grains, the mountains rising faintly in its texture. Every nation, every people, every mother and father, every child who ever cried for food they couldn't find, every worker whose back bent under the sun, all of them seated at this one table. And at that table, there are 3 men, just 3, but what they represent is everyone. The first man sits at what we might call the center, though on a round table there is no center unless you make yourself one. He is dressed in a tailored suit so crisp it has never known sweat. On his head sits a crown, not the crown of a king elected by his people, but the crown of a man who simply decided he deserved one. In front of him, his plate overflows with stacks of cash, so thick you cannot see the plate beneath. And behind him stretches a universe of excess. Cars that cost more than a village earns in a decade, yachts that dwarf the fishing boats of entire coastal communities, castles with more rooms than inhabitants, wealth so vast, so obscene, so grotesquely disproportionate that your mind struggles to hold the number. The second man sits to his right. He is tired. You can see it in the lines around his eyes, in the way his shoulders carry invisible weight. In front of him is $1 bill, crumpled, worn, barely holding together at the edges. It is his. He earned it. He worked 5 days a week, 9 hours a day for it. And behind him towers a different kind of world, a landlord's silhouette holding a rent notice that grows taller every month, a credit card statement curling at the edges like a wound that won't close, a clock frozen at 9 in the morning and refusing to release him until 5, a graph of the cost of living that only knows one direction, up. The third man sits to the center man's left. His plate is empty. Not nearly empty, not mostly empty, empty. And behind him is not a burden of debt or rent. Behind him is devastation. His city is in flames. The ground beneath his feet has been drilled open and emptied. The leaders his people chose have strings attached to their wrists, strings that trail back across the table. His nation has been hollowed out while the world looked away. And the man in the center is leaning over to the tired man on his right, and he is whispering, "Watch out, that man on the left, he wants to take your dollar." That is the table. That is the world. Let us talk about the man in the center. Let us not be afraid of him. Let us look at him clearly without the mythology that has been built around his kind, the mythology of genius, of merit, of deserved triumph. He is not a villain from a story. He does not twirl a mustache. He does not announce his intentions in a monologue at the end of a film. He goes to conferences. He gives speeches about innovation and progress. He funds charities with the left hand while lobbying governments with the right. He smiles for cameras. He speaks the language of giving while practicing the discipline of taking. Above the arrows that point from him toward the tired man's burdens, there is a single word: owner. Owner. Not creator, not builder, not innovator, owner. He owns the building the tired man pays rent to sleep in. He owns the bank that issued the credit card that charges interest the tired man cannot outrun. He owns the corporation that pays the tired man just enough to keep coming back, but never enough to leave. He owns the media companies that tell the tired man what to fear. He owns the think tanks that produce the research that shapes the tired man's understanding of how the world works and who is responsible for his suffering. He does not merely have money, he has architecture. He has built the very structures within which the tired man lives, dreams, fails, and tries again, never realizing that the maze was designed to keep him running in circles. Let us speak plainly about what ownership at this scale actually means. When 8 people, 8 human beings, own more wealth than the bottom half of humanity combined, that is not success. That is a malfunction. That is not the natural result of talent distributed unevenly across the earth. Talent is everywhere. Walk into any village in any country on any continent, and you will find genius. You will find children with minds that could cure diseases and compose symphonies and solve equations that rearrange our understanding of the universe. The difference between them and the man in the center is not talent. It is not even hard work. The difference is access, and access is controlled by those who already sit at the top of the table. The tired man works harder than the man in the center has ever worked in his life. He rises before the sun. He comes home after it sets. He skips meals to make ends meet. He delays doctor's visits because the deductible is too high. He watches his children grow up in the brief windows between his shifts, wondering if this is all there is, wondering if he is failing them, wondering what he is doing wrong. He is not doing anything wrong. The table is tilted, and the man in the center tilted it. The rent goes up, not because the apartment got better, but because the landlord's mortgage investment portfolio needs to perform. The credit card interest compounds, not because the tired man is irresponsible, but because the bank that owns his debt has shareholders who expect returns. The price of groceries climbs, not because food became harder to grow, but because the supply chain is now owned by 3 companies who answer to the same financial instruments. Everything the tired man touches has a toll booth on it, and every toll booth belongs to someone, and that someone sits at the center of the table. Owner. Now let us look at the arrows going the other way. From behind the man in the center, across the table, toward the man with the empty plate. Not arrows of generosity, not arrows of aid, arrows of fighter jets, arrows of warships, arrows of drone strikes and proxy conflicts, and carefully worded UN abstentions. Above these arrows, a single word: causer. Causer. This is the part of the conversation that makes comfortable people uncomfortable. This is where someone at the back of the room shifts in their seat and says, well, it's more complicated than that. And they are not entirely wrong. It is complicated. But complication has been used for generations as a reason to never arrive at truth. Complication has been weaponized to exhaust the people who are trying to understand what is being done to them. So let us be honest about the complications, and then let us still arrive at the truth. There are nations on this earth that have never known peace in the lifetime of anyone currently living. Nations where children are born into the sound of explosions and learn to identify aircraft by the engine noise before they learn to read. Nations where the hospital was bombed 3 times and rebuilt twice and now is rubble again. Nations where the word reconstruction has become a bitter joke because nothing was ever truly constructed to begin with, only extracted from. And if you trace the supply lines of those conflicts, if you follow the serial numbers on the weapons, if you read the fine print of the arms deals that get signed the moment a ceasefire breaks down, if you examine who profits from the contracts that are signed the moment a ceasefire breaks down, the arrows lead back to the same center. This is not conspiracy. This is commerce. The global weapons industry is worth over $2 trillion a year. $2 trillion. And it does not profit from peace. It profits from the perpetuation of exactly the kind of instability that the man with the empty plate lives inside every single day. Behind the man with the empty plate, his city burns. The smoke is not from campfires, it is from buildings, from markets, from schools. The children of that city have learned to sleep through certain sounds and cannot sleep through others. Their nervous systems have been rewired by years of proximity to violence, a violence they did not invite, did not deserve, and did not create. His mother remembers when the city was different. She keeps a photograph from before. She takes it out sometimes when she thinks no one is watching, and she looks at it for a long time without saying anything. The city in the photograph has trees. It has people sitting in outdoor cafes. It has children playing in streets that are still intact. She touches the photograph the way you touch something you are afraid will disappear if you hold it too hard. That city was destroyed not by the poor man's poverty. That city was destroyed by decisions made in rooms the poor man will never enter, by men in suits he will never meet, for reasons that were dressed up in the language of security and democracy and human rights, while human rights were the first casualty. Let us speak plainly about what resources actually mean, because where there is war in the modern world, there is almost always something underneath the ground worth taking: oil, lithium, cobalt, coltan, gold, diamond, uranium. The minerals that power the devices in our pockets and the batteries in the electric cars that the wealthy world congratulates itself for driving. The elements that make the modern economy run are pulled from the earth in places that have been deliberately kept too unstable to negotiate fair prices, too fractured to enforce environmental protections, too divided to present a unified front at the bargaining table. This is not accident. This is architecture. The instability is the strategy. The chaos is the business model. A functioning nation with a strong government and an educated population and a unified sense of its own value would demand fair prices for its resources, would build processing facilities, would climb the value chain, would become, over time, a rival rather than a supplier. And so the man in the center sends the jets. Not always directly, sometimes through proxies, sometimes through sanctions, sometimes through the funding of one faction against another, fueling a conflict that keeps the nation too busy bleeding to negotiate. Sometimes through the support of a dictator who will sign the contracts the people never would. Khazar. The word hangs in the air above the arrows like an indictment, because that is what it is. Behind the man with the empty plate, there is a hand, a large hand, reaching across the table from the direction of the center man. And connected to that hand are strings. And connected to those strings are the wrists of the man's leader, his president, his prime minister, his general. The person his people may have voted for, or may have had imposed upon them, or may have inherited through a coup that the international community called regrettable, and then continued doing business with the following morning. The leader moves, but the hand moves first. There is a particular grief that comes from puppet leadership. It is not the clean grief of being conquered by a foreign power. That, at least, is visible. It is the slow, suffocating grief of watching your own leader stand at a podium and speak words that seem like yours but serve someone else's interests. Of seeing your nation's resources signed away in agreements that were negotiated in private and announced as fait accompli. Of watching the man who was supposed to represent you represent instead the man who funded his campaign, forgave his predecessor's debt, kept his military supplied, and would have him removed the moment he became inconvenient. This has happened. It is happening. It is not history. It is Tuesday. The International Monetary Fund arrives with a loan. The loan comes with conditions. The conditions require the privatization of public utilities, the removal of subsidies on basic goods, the opening of protected industries to foreign competition. The people suffer. The rates of malnutrition climb. The public health system deteriorates. The educated leave, and the loan, which was supposed to develop the nation, has instead made it permanently dependent on the next loan, which will arrive with the same conditions, creating the same outcomes indefinitely. And through it all, the leader signs, because the hand is patient and the strings are strong. The man with the empty plate did not choose this. His grandmother did not choose this. His great-grandmother, who carried water 3 miles each morning, did not choose this. His great-great-grandmother, who was taken across an ocean in chains, or whose land was carved up at a conference she was not invited to, did not choose this. The empty plate is not an accident of culture or character. It is the end result of a system designed to keep it empty. And now let us talk about the whisper. The man in the center leans over to the tired man on his right, and he whispers. And what he whispers is the most powerful weapon he possesses, more powerful than the jets, more powerful than the puppet strings, more powerful than the debt traps or the rent hikes or the compounding interest. He whispers, fear. He points at the man with the empty plate and says, "That man is why you only have $1. That man is coming for what little you have. That man, different from you, speaking differently, praying differently, looking differently. That man is your enemy." And the tired man looks across the table, and he tightens his grip on his crumpled dollar, and he glares. This is the oldest trick in the history of power. It predates democracy. It predates capitalism. It is as old as the first person who realized that the most dangerous thing in the world is two people who have been wronged by the same system finally looking at each other and recognizing themselves. Because if the tired man and the empty plate man ever truly see each other, not as threats, not as competitors, not as the faces of their respective fears, but as brothers in the same condition, victims of the same architecture, survivors of the same design, then the whisper loses its power, and the man in the center becomes, for the first time, visible. Think about what the tired man has been told his whole life. He has been told that his struggling is because of immigration, that his wages are low because of foreign workers willing to take less, that his neighborhood is unsafe because of people who look like the man with the empty plate, that his children's schools are underfunded because resources are being spent on those who don't deserve them, that his future is being stolen by someone at the bottom, not by someone at the top. He has been told this on television channels owned by the man in the center, in newspapers funded by the man in the center, through algorithms designed by companies invested in by the man in the center, through politicians bankrolled by the man in the center. The whisper does not come only through lips. It comes through screens. It comes through headlines. It comes through the careful selection of which stories get told and which disappear. It comes through the language of us and them, repeated so many times it begins to feel like truth. The tired man is not stupid. He is not cruel by nature. He is not a villain in this story. He is a man who has been lied to with extraordinary sophistication for his entire life. He has been given a story about the world that keeps him looking sideways instead of upward. That story cost the man in the center nothing to tell, and buys him everything. Because while the tired man is afraid of the man with the empty plate, he is not afraid of the man in the center. And that is the point. But here is what the man in the center did not plan for. People talk. In the age of satellites and smartphones and translation software, the tired man and the empty plate man are talking to each other for the first time in history, at scale. And what they are discovering, what is being whispered now from the opposite direction, is recognition. The tired man sees a video of a family in the bombed city, and something in him, something older than the fear that was installed in him, stirs. Because that father carries his child through rubble the same way any father would. That mother screams the same scream in any language. That child's eyes, looking into the camera, hold the same confusion that any child holds when the world becomes suddenly, inexplicably cruel. And the tired man thinks, that could be me. And the man with the empty plate sees images of the tired man working 2 jobs while his child grows up without him, while his health deteriorates without insurance, while he slides slowly backward on a treadmill designed to never let him get ahead. And the man with the empty plate thinks, that could be me. And that recognition, that simple, human, ancient recognition, is the most dangerous thing in the world to the man at the center of the table. History is full of moments when people looked up from the whisper and saw the truth. When workers in factories who had been told to hate each other, told they were in competition, told the other group was the enemy, looked sideways and said, "We are building the same thing. We are paid the same poverty. We are sleeping in the same dangerous tenements. We are breathing the same poison air." And they organized, and the man in the center, for the first time, felt afraid. When colonized peoples, scattered across continents, divided by artificial borders drawn by distant hands, told that their neighbors were their rivals, began to correspond, to trade ideas, to build movements that crossed those borders, and said, "Our liberation is connected. We rise together or we do not rise." The man in the center sent armies. Because solidarity, true solidarity, is the only thing that's ever threatened his position at the table. Every right that exists in the tired man's country was not given. It was taken by people who looked up from the whisper, by people who saw the man at the center clearly, by people who were willing to stand together and say, "Enough," not on our behalf alone, on behalf of everyone at this table. Imagine, just imagine what becomes possible if the tired man and the empty plate man stop competing for the crumbs and start asking why the crumbs are all that is ever offered. Imagine if the tired man used his vote, his voice, his labor, his purchasing power, not to protect the little he has from the man with nothing, but to demand a reckoning with the man who has everything. Imagine if the man with the empty plate found in the tired man not a rival, but an ally. And together they said to the puppet leaders, "You do not represent us." And to the arms dealers, "You do not speak for us." And to the extractive corporations, "You do not own what belongs to all of us." And to the man in the center, "We see you. We have always seen you, and we are done pretending the table is fair." When the people lead, the leaders will follow. Let us be honest about what resistance costs. It is not comfortable. It is not safe. The man in the center has resources and patience. He has lawyers and lobbyists and laws written in his favor. He has the ability to wait out most movements, to co-opt the ones he cannot wait out, to criminalize the ones he cannot co-opt. History is full of people who resisted and paid a terrible price for it. But history is also full of people who resisted and won. And the difference between the ones who won and the ones who didn't is not courage. They all had courage. The difference is usually unity. The movements that fractured along the lines the man in the center drew, the racial lines, the national lines, the religious lines, the lines between the tired man and the man with the empty plate, those movements often failed. The movements that refused to let those lines divide them, that looked at each other across every difference and said, "Your freedom is my freedom, your dignity is my dignity," those movements changed the world. So, when you see the news and it is designed to make you afraid of a stranger, resist. When the politician tells you that your problems are caused by the people with the least power in the room, resist. When the algorithm shows you content that makes you feel contempt for people who are suffering while the people causing the suffering remain invisible and respectable, resist. When you are told that the world is complicated and nothing can be done, and this is just how things are, and who are you to think otherwise, resist. When your own exhaustion, and it is real, and it is valid, and the system counts on it, tells you that you are too tired to care about anyone beyond your own immediate circle, resist. Because resistance is not always marching in the streets. Sometimes resistance is simply refusing to believe the whisper. Sometimes it is choosing curiosity over contempt when you encounter someone different. Sometimes it is reading beyond the first headline. Sometimes it is asking who benefits from this story being told this way. Sometimes it is sitting with the discomfort of a truth that disrupts the narrative you were given. Sometimes resistance is simply saying out loud to one person in one conversation, "I think we are being lied to, and I think we deserve better, and I think the man at the center of the table is afraid of what happens when we realize that." You were not born to be managed. You were not born to be divided. You were not born to spend your one miraculous life guarding a single crumpled dollar from a man who has nothing while the man with everything whispers in your ear. You were born for more than that. And somewhere inside you, past the fear and the fatigue and the manufactured contempt, you know it. Come back to the table. Look at it again. It is round. It has always been round. Every side is equal. Every edge the same distance from the center, the true center, not the one that was claimed. The man in the center built his position not from the table itself, but from our acceptance of it, from our willingness to believe that this is natural, inevitable, ordained, from our exhaustion, from our fear, from the whisper we received so many times we began to repeat it ourselves. But the table was always ours. The resources under the ground of the man with the empty plate, they belong to his people. The labor of the tired man, it belongs to him, and it is worth more than he has ever been paid for it. The land, the water, the air, the accumulated knowledge of 10,000 generations of human civilization, these are not the property of the man in the center. They were never his to own. He merely convinced the rest of us that they were. A different world is not a utopia. It is not a fantasy. It is a choice, a million small choices made by ordinary people every single day to see each other clearly, to refuse the whisper, to look across every line that has been drawn between us and say, "I see you. I am with you. Your suffering is not background noise. Your humanity is not conditional. Your liberation and mine are bound together, and I will not pretend otherwise for the comfort of a man at a table who is afraid of what we become when we finally understand that." The man in the center has jets and warships and puppet strings and debt instruments and media empires and a very good tailor. But we have each other. And in the end, in every real moment in history when power finally shifted, that was always enough. The table is round. It was made for all of us. And it is time, long past time, to sit at it like we know that.